guys, welcome back to another video, and this video is pretty much a direct continuation from the last video where I picked up my new Marshall amp and the Boss tube amp expander. So since that I have gotten, well, a whole lot poorer financially, but a whole lot more better informed, because I've now ended up with the Fryette power station. And before I go into what was my problem with the Boss, etc, 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 what I've done is I've recorded some ABs. I set up the Fryette and the Boss, and I'm just going to go back and forth between them. I'll use humbuckers and single coils, and just so you know, the mic will be the same, the input will be the same, the amp settings will be exactly the same between the Strat and the humbuckers, and when I throw on my light speed, that will be the same. And there's going to be a white whale reverb in there, and again that will be the same. So every single thing will stay exactly the same except for the load box that we're using to power down the amplifier. Right then, so you've heard an A-B comparison there, just the very tip of the iceberg of a comparison between the Fryette and the Boss. And I just want to emphasize again, the only thing that was different is whether you heard it with the Boss reamping or with the Fryette. And maybe you can already hear from that the problems I began to have with the Boss. So let's start there then. Let's start where the last video left off, because if you watch that video, I was pretty pleased with the Boss. And in that video, volume-wise, we were pretty much at a sort of nighttime home playing volume. Very, very quiet. You know, barely as loud as the guitar itself kind of thing. And at that volume, and I stayed there for sort of the rest of the weekend pretty much, just dialing it in around that volume. And I was thinking I was onto a winner with the Boss, because at that volume, it's not loud enough for things like feel and, you know, high and low end to really kind of come into it, because at the end of the day, you're too quiet. So at that volume, I was thinking, wow, I've got my Marshall amp on like 6 plus. I've got my cab, and yet I can play it at night. So I was, like I said, very, very happy. The problems, though, started coming in the following days where I was trying to turn it up to sort of good daytime / recording levels. So still plenty quiet enough for the house, but loud enough so that in the room you get a good feel for it. If you put a mic up, the mic gets enough signal. And very, very quickly, I started finding that 30-watt solid-state power amp in the Boss was changing how my amplifier sounded quite a lot. It didn't feel right in the low end. It felt almost both removed and less clear somehow. And the same in the high end as well. It just didn't seem to have the right curve to it that I know from playing valve amps in the past. And then on top of all of that, the feel of it in the room under your fingers, no matter the guitar, it felt like you were playing through, you know, an old modeler, an old amp plugin. The sound's okay, but the feel just isn't there. And so at this point, we're about a week into the Boss, and I'm thinking, oh dear, you know, because I'm not made of money, and going after this stuff has been like a dangerously close to like ruin endeavor sort of thing. Like I'm in over my head at the minute, and I was like, oh no, I've bought the wrong thing kind of thing. And I always find that when that happens to people, when they make purchases and something clicks in them that, hang on, this isn't quite right, a lot of people go into like this denial or refusal to kind of listen to that. I'm not like that. The minute I really realised something was up, I was straight on the hunt for a solution kind of thing. And that solution has come in the form of the Fryette power station. So what are the main differences just off the bat? Well, main differences, I suppose, is, like I said, the Boss relies on a 30-watt solid-state power amp. The Fryette does a similar sort of thing. It's got a reactive load, brings the amplifier down to silent and re-amplifies it, however, with tubes. So we've got tubes in the amp and tubes in the reamp, if you like. Now, I only half buy into that. Like, maybe you're thinking I'm talking crap right now, sort of thing. Oh, tubes this, tubes that. But I promise you, the difference between the Fryette, the way it sounds and feels in the room, and the Boss is 100% night and day difference. Like, I cannot believe how different it is, sort of thing. And everything I've just said about that I was struggling with in the Boss, the Fryette completely, it solves it. It's almost like it's been designed for this solution. I guess it has, but like, it almost feels like the Fryette was made for this exact solution, but like before I had the problem. Do you know what I mean? It's that good of a fit is essentially what I'm saying. I cannot get over the difference. And if you've heard a bit of yourself in any of this, where you're drawn to going back to a real amplifier and real mics and you want to hear a real cab, you just want to go back to that place. But you know at home the volume is really difficult. So you've been looking at the Boss and you only want it to do that job. Do not get the Boss, because it is way too much of a compromise. Like, the Fryette is, like I said, night and day difference sort of thing. And I mean, that's kind of where I'm at now. So I've just kind of heard, every time I sit and do these videos where I talk for a long time, I have this voice in my head that's kind of pretending to be the comment section, and it's throwing things at me. It's really weird. And I'm hearing now people that have got the Boss or that are in favour of the Boss saying, well, hang on, the Boss you can do way more on. You can change all the EQ, you can do this, you can do that. And you're absolutely right. I could plug in the Boss, bring up its vast EQ options, and start fiddling around on a computer, finding those EQ spots, finding where I can boost the lows and the highs and balancing it at certain volumes. I could do all of that inside the Boss, and I'm fairly sure the differences that I feel between them would suddenly get a lot smaller because of that. Maybe, do you know what I mean? Perhaps that would be true. But for me, and I've said this for a long time now, so you'll be aware if you follow the channel, but I cannot stand any device to do with the guitar and your sound that involves plugging into a computer and going through menus and tweaking things that you don't really know what the hell they do. I hate that. And I did not buy the Boss for that. I did not buy the Boss for the IRs. That's another thing the Boss can do that the Fryette has nothing to do with. So, I hear you, but for me, it's completely irrelevant. All it needed to do was be an amazing, transparent volume control device. And the Fryette, one more time, is night and day difference above the Boss. So, like I said, that is kind of where we're at now. I suppose I should balance all of that with maybe some negatives on the Fryette. Number one, well, it's the same as the positive. It's tube powered. It's got 3 tubes in it. I think my Marshall's got, 5. So now I've got 8 tubes to kind of keep on top of. And just as a side note as well, if you're someone who's already been doing that for years in the UK, please let me know a good, solid place that I can stockpile some replacement tubes, just so I've got them for my peace of mind. I'd like to have a spare set, a 1-for-1 replacement for all of them. So let me know what to do for that, because I've never actually had to buy tubes before. So anyway, that's by the way. But so yeah, negatives on the Fryette. The Fryette is actually a little bit louder than the Boss. That's both in terms of its fan noise and also its noise floor. When you turn it on, it has got a noise floor, if you like, that's audible. It's sort of cool though, because it's if you've ever had like really old amps or old hi-fis or even old televisions and stuff, like if you're old enough for that, there was always like an electronical kind of small hum underneath that signified like power and something was on. And that is the Fryette does have that. The Boss is virtually silent and the fan only comes on briefly now and again, whereas on the Fryette you do always hear the fan. Obviously the weight, I would say it's about 8 times heavier than the Boss. The Fryette, we're all kind of used to a certain build quality now. Think of your phones or your modern cars, like mass-produced things that are built to a certain level, and they're kind of pretty good. When I opened the Fryette and picked it up and I peered inside it and looked at the transformer and the valves, I was blown away by how incredible the build quality feels on the Fryette. But as I say, it's a lot heavier than the Boss, so maybe that could go down as a negative against the Boss. And other than that, that's pretty much about it, because the features the Boss has, the IRs and all that, I never cared for in the first place. But if you do, then obviously the Boss is going to be definitely worth looking at. So the only other thing to cover then, before I sign off, I appreciate this has been a lot of talking, but it's been a lot of learning and a sort of complex up and down story, if you like. But the 2-Notes Reload 2 that just came out and is about the same price as the Fryette, so of course that kind of entered my thought process as well. Now, the reason I didn't go for that, even though it's the newest kid on the block, shall we say, and is being reviewed very well by all accounts, is although it's a lot more powerful than the Boss, it is still a Class D solid state amplifier. And I just got nervous that everything I just learnt from the Boss would also be there to however degree in the 2-Notes. It might not be, I've never tried one, I would like to try one, but the Fryette being tube powered listening to people that have been speaking to me throughout this, I felt way more confident that I wouldn't have any of that in the Fryette, and of course, you know, you don't. It's an incredible device. So I think I'm going to leave it there for now. Like I said, I appreciate that's a lot of talking, but it's a lot of ground to cover, and you know, I'm squeezing the last two and a half weeks into 10 minutes sort of thing. So let me know what you think in those A/B comparisons, and just kind of let me know your thoughts in general, because I know that, you know, some people have not had any issues with the Boss at all, and maybe you're one of those. So I'd love to hear what you think, and going forward we're going to be looking at the Fryette and the Marshall in much more detail, and again it'll be the sound you hear all the time. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on another one very soon.